breaks internet.
Yeah.
Right, we should be going now. How are we doing?
Yeah, I think it's
Whatever one we're live
loading.
on now is the one we're live on, I think.
Okay.
Nice.
Yeah, once again, in the wrong video, we're just going to have to go forward with the one that we're in.
Okay.
Becky, send a wee message there. Just say, hey, we're on another video. Whoops, technical issues.
Yeah, no problem.
No.
That's so funny.
Someone called Eric said IAB on the pod.
That's my friend that lives in London.
Oh, nice. Welcome everyone who's joining us. We're just hanging out for a couple of minutes here. We'll get everyone settled into the new location. Sorry that the link is broken again for the second week in a row. That is my fault. Whoops. Cool. Okay, we have one watching, and I think it's just me.
Yeah. I've notified people to switch over.
Okay, we've got 3 in now. Not sure why that happens. It's so annoying.
Very frustrating.
Yeah. Welcome everyone.
Welcome people.
There we go.
As people slowly join, we were just talking about how we were talking about our celebrity lookalikes, and everyone was remarking how I look like Brad Pitt. So thanks for that. 1990s Brad Pitt, or Brad Pitt in Troy, topless. I think that's his peak masculine physique. Ian,
I think that's the right one.
I think that's the one, right? Or maybe I would say Fight Club, but it has a bit of dirty connotation these days.
I've
Fight
never
Club's
seen
a great
it.
movie. Fight Club's a great movie, but I also think a lot of the fans of Fight Club have ruined it as a movie. I'm just going to say it, leave it there. Welcome to anyone who's joining in here.
Okay, so there's 8 people.
Okay, awesome, fantastic. Welcome
we have a
everyone.
quorum.
Sorry about the little mess up there about the link. We will sort this going forward. If you've just joined us and you want to say hello, just drop us a little message. Let us know where you're from. Let us know if you're related to any of us. We appreciate you for tuning in. Thank you very much.
Yes, thanks for being here. So speaking of celebrity lookalikes, I just want to address something before we get started. Guys, we are not joined by Josh O'Connor. This is Ian Bentley. It's not Josh O'Connor.
Yeah,
as I mistakenly made that mistake on TikTok earlier. Yeah. He was not in the Crown. Different guy.
Unfortunately.
Different guy.
Probably be making more money.
Incredible.
I don't think you'd be here talking with us, Ian.
Incredible tennis player, though, if anyone's seen Challengers.
Okay. I have seen Challengers.
Yeah, very, very good.
Actually, my friend gave me a challenge. I might have it right here, actually. Here. My friend gave me the screenplay to Challengers because he thought I looked like Josh O'Connor.
No way.
What is
so I'm like, okay.
What are like 90% of that script surely is like slow motion footage of tennis ball. Like that must be like most of it. Amazing film.
I think it's CGI'd, I got to imagine.
Yeah, it was amazing.
Yeah.
See, speaking of like celebrity lookalikes, I posted a TikTok a couple of months ago, and it was the one with the piano, Rebecca, the one that went like semi-viral, and you'd expect to get like, I don't know, must have had like, let's say it had 1,000 comments, you'd expect to get some hate on it. So after a while I got a comment, or one of the first comments on it was like, hey, you remind me of Ryan Reynolds. And I was like, oh, that's amazing, like what a compliment. Like obviously I don't look like Ryan Reynolds, but Ryan Reynolds is really handsome. And I was like, liked it, and I wrote underneath it, thank you, because at this time I didn't know that the video was going to go viral. And about a day later, someone wrote underneath it, are you blind? And that comment got like 100 likes. And it just absolutely just killed my confidence in the space of like 24 hours. So the whole celebrity lookalike thing is fun until you get, completely ratioed in public. So there you go.
Yeah. There is someone, Gal, you get told all the time, right?
Ryan Reynolds.
Apart from Ryan Reynolds and Brad Pitt.
Skinny Hagrid. I get that quite a bit.
Skinny Hagrid.
When the hair's long.
I was thinking Nicolas Cage. You
I
get
do get
to
Nicolas
pull Nicolas
Cage.
Cage quite a lot.
Nicolas Cage is a tricky one because it's like Nicolas Cage in which film?
Mm.
So it's like, because I don't know. Can
On
he
the
be
Yeah.
anything?
architecture, you do kind of look like Thomas Heatherwick.
Whoa, slag of the century there, Ian. Am I joking?
No, I'll take that as long as you're not saying that my architecture looks like Thomas Heatherwick's. Oh, shots
Did you,
fired.
he
I'm only joking.
actually he
Thomas is
just
a fan of the show. Thomas, sorry, love you, man, love you,
he did,
love your work.
it was
Yeah.
not a diss at all.
Very good.
Mm,
But yeah, if like I mean Thomas Heatherwick, we will work with you if you want.
Yeah.
You know,
come on the
just
show.
saying, just
Come on the
saying.
show.
Come on the show. We would love it.
We
We
can
would
do an
love
architecture doppelgangers.
that. Yeah, I wonder if he ever gets told he looks like you, Cal.
Dumb.
There's this guy on the internet, right? And he looks just
Yeah.
like you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, people will know Cathal now because he was in Arc Paper today alongside
Nice.
Dammy Lee, right beside Dammy Lee.
Famous.
So
It's like
he's
the
made up.
internet architecture's Mount Rushmore, and somehow I've managed to end up on it, which is hilarious. So yeah,
So
fantastic accomplishment.
we
from
have
me.
a couple of comments in. So the first one is Marin Glenn saying that's Ed Norton playing as Brad Pitt in Fight Club. The second one is from Eric saying greetings from London. I am related to Ian's dog Winston.
Yeah, dog relative.
Yep.
Love that.
Welcome.
Great.
Welcome.
Thanks, guys. And any more comments, please write in. Tell us who Cal looks like. Is he a skinny Hagrid? Is he
Don't-
Nicolas Cage?
Don't actually tell me who I look like because my confidence is not soaring tonight. Oh God, there's another one. Oh, we've got Glenn North, Ian's in-laws. Claire and Glenn say hello from Milwaukee. Greetings, Glenn and family. Milwaukee. I've never been to Milwaukee.
Hello, Milwaukee.
Lovely place.
Yep.
Yeah, I've heard that. Yeah.
I think we're just gonna hang out for another minute here, and then we can probably crack on.
Yeah.
Mic issues. Is anyone in the chat experiencing anything odd about my mic? Because for the guy with the biggest microphone, I seem to have the worst audio quality, which is so embarrassing.
Cal, you just need to shout for the episode.
I don't know, but I don't know. We'll see how it goes. Maybe it's just because I've just got such a chilled out vibe that the mic just like mutes me a bit. I'm just I'm not outspoken at all.
No, you're super chill.
Yeah, completely. Well, why don't we just kick off? I think we have 13 people watching. Oh, Miriam Schroeder, mic sounds great. So there you go, Rebecca and Ian. The mic sounds great. What are you talking about? What are you talking
Sounds
Sound
great.
is good.
We never
Thank
said
you,
it didn't.
Gilda.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we have 13 in the room. So fantastic. Welcome. If you're here and you have any questions or you want to say hello. Ah, yes, Sticks. Mike's doing
Sticks
a
is
lot
back.
better. Sticks is back.
Sticks is back. Our sound
We have a-
engineer.
We have a producer. Sticks, welcome. You're officially the producer of the Future Blueprint. Welcome back. Eric, I don't know who Bo Clark is, but we need to chill out with the lookalikes here because I'm going to be distracted all night through the show. So we'll see. I'll check it out. I trust you. It's all good. But we have 13 in the room. So if you just joined, drop us a hello. Welcome to the Future Blueprint Live. This is the second live show that Rebecca and I have done. And this week we have super duper special guest, Ian Bentley. So Ian, I'm going to let you introduce yourself in a minute because if I try to introduce you, I'm going to do what I did last time we had a guest on and I'm going to pronounce your name wrong. That was super embarrassing.
Okay.
So Ian, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? What is up, Ian Bentley?
Sure. Yeah. Great to be here. Excited to talk with you guys for the next hour or so. And yeah, in general, this is just super cool. I love being able to chat architecture and design and all things industry. Little bit about myself. I'm in New York. Been in the industry professionally for the last 10 years or so, doing all different types of scales from, small apartments, restaurants to institutional work, educational, and even large scale infrastructure projects. And then in addition to any architecture work, I also run a branding marketing agency called Noise on the side, where we kind of integrate some of those tactics of advertising, marketing, and traditional, non-traditional media into the projects, and really grow projects from ground up projects all the way through sellout and marketing and branding, and trying to mesh those two worlds together is kind of the ethos behind like what we do on a daily basis. And there's a lot more that we do, but to spare everyone from the long list, we'll just leave it at that. But yeah, I really love this field. I think from the beginning, I didn't really know I wanted to do architecture. I wanted to be a pharmacist at first, and then I
Mm.
got into the world of architecture through being at university and kind of discovering that after I'd already committed to a school to play sports. And then I found the architecture college inside that during one of my first visits. Excuse me. And then, yeah, that's basically it. Right from school, got an internship, went into the industry, and the rest is history, so to speak.
Amazing. Yeah, that sounds
Yeah,
fantastic because we're actually noticing more and more that branding is one of the things that is sort of missing from architecture.
totally.
Um, but it should go hand in hand. It's
Mm.
such a
Yeah,
natural fit. Because if people don't understand what the project is about, their ethos, their background, their personal brand, then they don't know what they really want from them. So
yeah.
it lends itself to it so easily. So you imagine that being a thing that more people do, but you don't hear of it a lot.
Yeah, and I think the main difference, and there are some firms that do branding work, like Gensler, I think is one that does a lot of branding work, and I think they probably put a fair amount of really, you know, design-driven solutions behind their branding. I imagine they probably have a full branding team, marketing team that does that stuff, but there's not that many firms that really collaborate or do branding. And
Mm-hmm.
what we found was, if we're going to design the building or market the building, we should do the other side of the coin, because then it's just a more cohesive project. A lot of
Mm-hmm.
times, what you'll do is you'll have a architect come in, they'll do the design, obviously, and then they'll kind of hand it off and CA, whether that's a local architect or whatever. And then once the project's at 99% and the punch list is final, they either turn it over to the sales team or the marketing team, and they don't really have that much involvement. And I think there's a huge gap there to start even earlier and bring in the marketing and the branding into the architecture, make sure that even those little trim details are branded, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I think it's a really exciting field and world to build. And then on top of that, we're obsessed with marketing and branding in the US, but particularly in New York. The exciting part is really growing that outside of the city. And we were just talking about this yesterday. Is we think of New York as like the Mecca, same New York, LA, Miami, but at the end of the day, there's 300 million more people out in the country that can experience and should experience like better design and more integrated design. And yeah, we're super excited to kind of bring that not just into the city and its boroughs, but beyond.
Mm. That's great. Is most of your work in Manhattan or is it New York
Yeah,
State?
yeah, New York. We actually we're talking about a project in Tennessee, talking about a project in Kentucky, some work in Florida, etc., and even the UK. But yeah, it's mainly New York. I mean, this is the mecca of of places. It's like it's kind of it's hard to start here, obviously, because to make a name for yourself, or to even to just get into the industry in general, it's very competitive. But I imagine it's also difficult sometimes, like outside of the city, because the market's just smaller and there's just less job availability. But to start here in the city and then grow outward is it's an interesting it's an interesting
Mm,
path for sure.
yeah.
I'm always kind of like thrown back to when I don't know if you saw the Bjarke Ingels documentary, but he was talking about coming from Copenhagen to New York, and like the goal was, okay, I want to go to New York. If I'm going to go to America, got to go to New York. And I'm like, wow, it would have been interesting to start in like a small part, like in Pennsylvania, and then come to New York. Like, could you stand out quicker in a smaller city? But you do need that client to kind of trust you too. And I think he had that, obviously. But yeah, it's fun.
Could you make the argument possibly, and this is going to be controversial here, especially if we have any Americans listening, could you make the argument though that someone like Bjork Ingles can go to New York because it's probably the least American city?
Yeah, that's true. I mean, would his stuff work in Atlanta as much, right off the bat? I'm not sure. That's a good point. It's such a multicultural and diverse place that the oddity that is, interesting architecture is successful because of, the fact that the city is diverse, so diverse. So that's a good point. I didn't think about that.
Because I always consider New York, I always consider its European analog to be London. And I think anybody from the UK or Ireland is very aware that London is not England. Like, it's just not. Like, it is in England, but it is not English in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
And I know if anyone's listening and takes that quite literally, I think they should be smart enough if they're listening to know exactly what I mean. It's, like you say, incredibly diverse, multicultural. And in a lot of ways, it's welcoming to an outsider or another European or someone who has big ideas in a way that more conservative aspects of the country might not be. Right. So in a way, it's like I think I would say that it's incredible. It was probably incredibly strategic that he was like, New York, yeah, they'll accept me there. Danish, Scandinavian architect, this is the place to build.
Sort of like
even LA to an extent.
Yeah,
probably wouldn't be the same.
Yeah, true.
Yeah. Speaking of making it as an architect in New York, like that's a huge feat, and for a lot of people that is the dream, even for someone like me when I was younger. I remember watching a TV show, well, it was an LA TV show, so it was The Hills reality TV show, and I remember Lauren Conrad's dad was an architect, and he was an architect in America, and I was like, that's what I'm gonna be. I'm gonna be an architect in America. I always loved New York. Like, went there for the first time when I was 12 years old, and it was the first place that I had ever been to outside of Europe. And I remember feeling so different. It really hit you whenever you're in that city because it's so huge, like it's so overwhelming being there. The sounds, the smells, the people, everything is so distinctly New York. But I guess that's why it's always the sort of the other character in shows and in films, and it's that there's a reason that it's famous, right? But I guess if you were to give a piece of advice to a young aspiring architect for making it as an architect in New York, what would it be?
That's a good question. I mean, I would also preface this with I have not made it in like I think in the sense of
living in New York, that's an architect, that's sufficient.
You're surviving in New York, you've made it.
Yeah, that's
still
okay.
There. You're still
that's
there.
A good point.
Left.
Yeah, you're right. I can successfully pay my rent bill every month. No, I think to make it in this city, you have to be very passionate about what you do. You have to care a lot about what you do. And you have to always be thinking and evolving in your industry and outside of your industry. And I think that can come from a number of different pathways. Diversifying your company ethos or whatever, or you're offering services, adding the branding in, or having a passion in this that leads to this. It's not one track minded in this city. Everyone does 1,000 things. And I think there was I forget who said this, but she's a comedian / like just general New York icon, Fran Lebowitz, I believe her name was, and she said, like, I don't know how anyone makes it in New York, but they do. Like, no one can afford New York, but they pay their rent, and somehow they do. And when you're here, you just like you find ways to make it work somehow, even if the math doesn't add up. Like, you take your salary and take your taxes out, and then look at your rent and look at going out. It's like, there's no way I can afford this. And then somehow every month the money comes in and then it goes out, and it's like, I'm still living here. I've been here for 6 years, and it's like, okay, I can do it. So, but I think it doesn't come without the effort of wanting to be here, and that will give you the drive. But you really have to want to be here, and you have to want to work on what you're producing, whether that be architecture or art or music or whatever, acting. And yeah, it's really just about the passion, because I think in other states, and maybe even other countries, you probably can get by being like just flatlined, like, I'm going to do this every single day for the rest of my life and not like really change too much. But in New York, it's just it's a different environment. There's really no city like it, I think. But yeah, that's what I love about it. And everything changes, all the time. You have 9 million of your best friends like right outside the door, and you know, it's great.
Amazing.
Would you? This is going to sound like an ignorant question. Would you consider yourself a New Yorker?
Good question. I mean, not really. Like, I grew up in Pennsylvania. I was born in Texas. I went to school in New Jersey. My dad's from New York, and my mom's from Connecticut, Vermont area. So, it's definitely like in there, like as like a New Yorker, so to speak. But I wasn't born here. I haven't really spent too much time here. I can tell you like the corner that this restaurant is on, like the back of my hand, mainly because I just bike around the city all the time. But it's not, I wasn't born here, so I don't think. And even if I stayed here for 20 years, it's like, yeah, I live in New York, but am I a New Yorker? Probably not.
I don't know, because for example, you and I met through Instagram, and
Yeah.
as you do, someone DM'd you, and are you hiring? Who, me? Absolutely not. Sorry, Marin Glen. Not hiring. Sorry,
Are you
distracted by
hiring?
the chat.
It's probably for Ian.
No, it's for me. The questions
Probably
are
for
for me.
Ian,
The
Cal.
questions are for me. Sorry,
I
I was
don't
me
think it's
talking.
for you.
Yeah, Ian, are you hiring? That's a
Yeah,
question.
we will
That's a
be.
question from me.
Stay tuned, Marin Glen. Follow Ian Bentley on Instagram if you're not
Sorry.
already.
Need to get better. Marin Glen, we will answer this question properly, and we'll get to the bottom of who that's for, because there's no way it's not for me. Come on, questions for me.
Is the future blueprint hiring?
Is the future blue? Yeah, that's the problem of having two
Marin
YouTubes.
Glen just cut you there.
Oh.
No, Ian.
Ooh.
Not this time. Sorry. So Ian, you and I met on Instagram, and as you do when someone reaches out, you go to their profile, you check out the profile, because usually you want to see where they're from. I looked at your Instagram grid and was like, oh wow, that's a New Yorker. Like, this guy lives and breathes New York. Like, I just thought that, and it's just funny because obviously I understand the definition technically is were you born there and so on, but it's like, I don't know, I wonder, because I compare it again without always bringing it back home or to home in a way, but like London, a lot of people very much adopt it as their city, even though they're not from London. I never considered myself a Londoner, but I don't know. I guess it's an attitude thing, right?
Yeah.
And the reason why I'm asking that is because I do very much think that attitude can inform your approach to architecture in a city in a lot of ways. And we're talking about Björk Ingels, who is in many ways, who's obviously a European, but there's something very acontextual about a lot of that practice's work. Yeah. And what I'm trying to sort of get around to is that how would you apply that attitude then to your own work? Like, would you be context first? Would you have a different philosophy driving your practice? Do you see where I'm kind of going there? Sorry if it's a bit word salady. And are you hiring? Could you answer the question, please? I'm trying to, like all over the place here. Sorry.
Yeah. At the moment, no, but soon, hopefully. Because as that, the question of are you hiring happens when you grow and get more money with your practice. So hopefully soon, very soon. But as an aside to that, it's, it's interesting. I think, you know, when you're designing in your city, the best thing is that you care about that city. And I think you can take those, you know, you don't get to design every building that you ever do in your city. So you have to almost take those principles of your city that you grew up in, or, you know, when I say grow up too, it's like, where did you grow up? Well, you could say that I grew up in New York because my perception of the world and the way I see it now is formed by my experience in the city versus my experience in like Pennsylvania next to a farm. You know what I mean? So it's a little different. But and travel obviously like helps with that. And maybe I'm not answering your question totally, but
No, it's good.
It's interesting like when you go through the process, and I think in general, you know, if you care about that work, the work will show that it's, you know, through it's good through your caring and love and, you know, affection, so to speak, of that project. And you learn that through experiences in your own city. I can speak to like how our process is it's definitely contextual. I think we take a long look at like how the site sits in its context. What does it need? What do the people need? And you know, try and inform as much as possible, obviously with the approval of the client. Like, how can we make this even better? You know, not taking the program or the ask and just looking at it as a base standard and saying, yeah, that's what we're going to do. That's what's in the contract. It is not in our blood to like just do that. It's how can we make this better? How can we take our vision of a more complete project and influence that? Like one project that I'm thinking of is something that we just got reached out to the other day, but you know, it's 700 units in Louisville, Kentucky. It's, as you can imagine, a parking lot with 3 floors of wood frame building. How do we change how that is perceived in a future generation of, you know, the United States and the world? And how do we incorporate something that is better for those tenants? And you could say some of it is Scandinavian-esque or, you know, Asian inspired or whatever, you know, bringing in sustainability, bringing in, you know, a well-rounded living culture of, okay, maybe we push the parking to something that's not the focal point and it's a park. And so the center, rather than being the parking lot and your front door, is actually the back door and a running track. And so it's kind of like, what would you think is the most ideal situation to live in? And then applying that to your projects, and hopefully your client bites and thinks it's a good idea. And sometimes they don't. Sometimes they're like, no, just do that. I know it works, and done. And you try and find like small wins, so you don't want to go home and just cry in your pillow. But it's like, you know, you try and find and present the best idea. Then usually I would say 99% of the time people go, yeah, that's a better idea than what I was going to do. And they appreciate it, as long as it doesn't cost them too much more money, because budget rules all, I think, in architecture. But yeah,
That's so true. So we have a question from Eric saying, why is pedestrian friendly architecture so hard to replicate with new projects? I'm talking ground floor retail, apartments above, but the type of design that feels natural, i.e. West Village. So I think the question is, why is pedestrian friendly architecture so hard to replicate with new projects?
that's a good question. I mean, I think a lot of what we drive or strive for, like as architects, is pedestrian friendly architecture. I think, you know, the United States in general is a car-based society, so it's very difficult, I think, to build pedestrian friendly architecture because you have to design a lot around a car, right? We don't have cities that have intense metro systems or bike systems, or even walk friendly systems. I would love to see like a score on like the walkability of the US averaged across, exclude New York, because that's going to skew it totally. But even in New York, like I spent some time in Newark, New Jersey, and you know, these new developments that are essentially you know, empty ground floors because the retail is so expensive that no one can put their little bakery mom and pop
Mm.
shop in the $30,000 a month corner unit, condo unit on the ground floor. It's not feasible for them. So you end up getting the Lululemons and honestly, like these hyper capitalist sort of companies,
Mhm.
that also don't really have a personality to them. Yes, we love them, we buy from them, and they're luxury products, and you could say they have a personality of their own. But at the end of the day, would you rather have the local bodega or shop where you can communicate with that guy who's done that for 20 years, or would you rather have the corporate, fashion store? You'd probably rather have
Mhm.
the bodega, but the bodega can't afford the $40,000 a month retail spot. So they
Mhm.
go to the more pedestrian friendly and older buildings. And so, I think if you were to suggest something, it would be, how do we get like community spaces? How do we get more public spaces on ground floors? Thinking more like big mega block developments. Um, and I think also it comes down to density. The West Village is so small in a density standpoint from a density standpoint that it's just not going to feel like that in a lot of locations in a mega city like New York, or
Mhm.
even like a Shanghai or Hong Kong, like to Tokyo. Like you just can't really do that because we need that density. But what you can do is make those walkable cities, or like small nodes in these places like Louisville, and these places that haven't really experienced these new
Mhm.
types because their densities and their populations are going to be growing, but
Mhm.
they're not used to that world yet. They're only
Mhm.
used to suburban and like semi-urban, right? Like, and by semi-urban, I mean you got 4 office towers in a downtown area with just cars and a parking garage, and then that's it, and like the lobby, and then you leave. And what we can do is start to implement like different varying densities, more public ground floors that maybe don't have retail specifically, but more community things, even like schools or kindergartens. A lot of kindergartens in New York are just retrofitted storefronts,
Mhm.
and it's a more lively storefront. Obviously, except for at night and on the weekends, but in my opinion, that's kind of a better use than obviously an empty storefront that no one can utilize,
Mhm.
because it's too expensive. So yeah, I think it just all comes down to the program that the client gives to the architect, and then also how does the architect going to shape that ground floor, excluding the top. The top
Mhm.
is probably one thing. It is what it is. But how do we shape that ground floor around a more public domain and an interaction that lets people want to sit there, or
Mhm.
inhabit that space for a longer period of time than just like coming and going.
Mhm. Yeah, I
Good.
love that answer. When you were talking there and you were talking about these places that maybe aren't as developed or as dense as New York yet, but they might be someday. It
Yeah.
reminded me of what's happening in Belfast at the minute because Northern Ireland is in this really strange but almost really exciting and promising stage of its life, in
Yep.
that we had the Troubles, which slowed us down. They ended 30 years ago. And it's now that we're starting to pick up on the fact that we're part of the UK. We're also attached to Ireland, which is part of the European Union. We have all these fantastic nodes and relationships, and we're sort of this tiny country that hasn't been developed as well as it could have been yet because we
Yeah.
were set back. But everywhere around us is extremely developed, like Dublin and London, Manchester, Liverpool, many cities in like UK and Ireland and Europe, the
Yep.
rest of Europe. So we now have this opportunity to look at the other cities, look at the mistakes that were made and learn from them and do it really quickly and like
Yeah.
catch up. So
Yeah.
that really.
That's exactly what I think these middle of the country cities should be doing. I think they should be looking at and analyzing the flaws and the successes of a New York, New Jersey, Boston, and those metropolises, and understanding why they're successful and why they're not, And a lot of it just has to deal with public infrastructure. I think that will solve a lot of problems. Um, my wife's friend has this saying called "invest in the Midwest," and and it's mainly just driven from the fact that the Midwest and like the whole center corridor of the country is going to be at one point, and we can check back on this like 50 years from now,
Mhm.
one of the most valuable stretches of land in the world because it's going to be, a sort of new America, I think, in a sense, because the coasts are, sea level rise in general. It's going to change the landscape, I think, of the country. And, I hope that New York isn't abandoned at one point, but it very well could be if sea
Mhm.
level rise is not solved. And, yeah, so that whole center part of the country is going to be so valuable. I would be putting all of my money into developing, high speed rail infrastructure into that up and down corridor of the center pit of the country, and even spiraling out into like the south and the mountain region, but
Mhm.
really just pumping that with new and an exciting architecture. It's like the new frontier almost. It's a second coming of Lewis and Clark, so to speak. It's like, okay, we know that we have a freshwater source. We know that we have a pretty good climate of, exposure. It's not too cloudy, so we can do solar. We obviously have a lot of availability of wind, just based on the amount of tornadoes that happen and the current wind farms that are already out there in Kansas and Colorado. And so we already have like the basis of what we need. It's just learning from those previous mistakes and successes that can really push it into the next generation.
Mhm.
But yeah, totally agree. And other countries in like Europe and beyond, like they should also be learning from these mega cities. Like, you know, China puts up like a new 5 million person city like it's nothing. It's like it's crazy. So we should be learning from everyone about
Mhm.
what's good and what's not.
Mhm. Love that. We also have a question from Miriam saying, "What
That's
are
my
your
wife.
architecture pet peeves?" She wants to know
What's
your
my
pet peeves
my pet peeves?
in archictecture.
AI is one of them.
That's a
I
conversation
mean,
we can have in a minute. Well, because like, yeah, awesome.
I mean, it's fine. I think it's a great tool for people to start. Like, you want to do like the Lego building blocks version of architecture. Go to Mid Journey, type in some prompts, have fun. But I even looking, and no offense to the greatest Zaha Hadid, but like what they're doing with the AI generation, I gotta be honest, I feel like the clients are getting ripped off a little bit.
Mm,
You go in, I saw this at AIA. Schumacher was doing this presentation, and by all means, it's art within itself. But they basically take like past projects and turn them into their generative model and spit out like a competition entry. And then he said that they just like tweaked a couple things to make it look good. They won the competition, and then it was pretty much done because all they have to do is just make the drawings based on that image. And so they skipped so much time. And I'm like, but you're still charging those incredible fees. And I know that like, industry changes and things, grow and how you work is totally different, down the road. Even going back to like industrial age, the handmade work is not as good as the machine made work. But at least in the current iteration that we're at with AI, it just feels like we're skipping a step. It feels, and yeah, I think that's one of my pet peeves.
Mhm.
But what's another pet peeve? That's a good question, actually. I don't really think about what makes me mad about the industry that I'm in all the
Yeah.
time.
Just on that, I was thinking about AI is supposed to take over the mundane tasks,
Hmm.
but what Patrick Schumacher just described is the
Yeah,
best part of
it's
being
the
an
best part of
architect
architecture.
is, that initial design stage. So why would
Yeah,
you want AI to take over the most exciting
exactly.
part? Just go in, just be a project manager and make more money. Just do
The
something else.
whole the whole point of being in school was to ideate and put your best idea forward without the fear of having to figure out the constructability of it. And
Mm,
so if you're skipping that by putting it into a language learning model or whatever, image learning model, I guess it would be for some of those other programs, but it's yeah, it just kind of makes it boring. I'd rather have an AI model that just picks up red lines
mm,
Yeah, I
or
think
yeah,
DOB comments.
boring.
yeah.
Boring's such a good word for it because I do sometimes think, like, let's say what AI, generative AI became, let's say, like basically my parents were playing with it 2022. So let's say it became mainstream 2022. Um, and yeah, they are the canary in the coal mine for what I consider mainstream in tech. So if like your parents' generation are playing with it, then it's probably mainstream. So what I'm getting at is it's so boring. Like
Yeah,
it just like it's useful, but in terms of creativity and making and
yeah,
design, what's left then? Like
yeah,
what's left? Because in my opinion, that's the only thing that is left is
yeah.
how we, like you say, ideate. Sorry, idiot. Freudian slip there on my part. But you know
I
what
was
I'm saying?
thinking,
Like,
idiot.
yeah, it's like it's the best. It's the best. It's sort of what we have left, and it's
Yeah,
often the part that clients want to pay for least, and it's
yeah,
probably the part that we struggle to communicate its value most. Like
yeah,
I've had that real experience just this last month. Like, what do I need design for?
yeah,
Well, let me tell you. And then I'll write a 1,000 word email, and I didn't get the job
yeah,
because I couldn't communicate
yeah,
why that was valuable. Because they think I'll just type it into the robot, and the robot
yeah,
will design it, and it'll be good. And they're
yeah,
not. They're not wrong. Is
yeah.
that controversial to say? The client, the market isn't wrong for
It
wanting it either.
depends what you want, you
What if
know.
you just want a standard basic home?
Yeah.
Right.
Like, what if you just want a McMansion? What do
Mhm.
you like? I'm not. This is I'm asking this as a provocation. What do you need an
Mhm.
architect for
You
Yeah.
necessarily?
need what you need if you want a McMansion is a shit architect. So you may
We
as
might
well
have
just get
McMansion
AI.
architects in the chat here. I actually like McMansions, but not in the way that they're probably supposed to be enjoyed. I think I like them in a weird fetishistic kind of way. They're just odd little things.
I will
McMansion
say
hell. I love that.
McMansion
those,
fetish.
yeah, those projects are a lot harder, I think, to do than people might think. Like designing a 7,000 square foot house is actually from like an architectural perspective to make it look good is
Mm,
actually one of the more difficult things I think to do. Because what's the alternative when you look at a different typology, like a 1,000,000 square foot office building? Well, you just take a rectangle and extrude it up and cover it in glass, and there's your 1,000,000 square feet. Not that hard. It's been done 1,000 times, obviously, and it's in the details to make it unique and everything else. But when you come down to like the form making, it's very difficult to make a 7,000 square foot house look good. And I think going back to like the firm and everything, what we want to do is make projects look good and make them feel good and you know make them have a purpose outside of just like throwing something in a model, making it into this, and then calling it a day. And it's like, look at me, I can make a swoopy curve. Boom. It's like I actually love like some people would call it mundane, but like the mundaneness of like a chipper field where you have a very regular rhythm of very detail oriented structural elements and stone cladding and glass, and it's very high performing and it's very visually appealing from the inside out and outside in. And ultimately it's just a good project because I think you just layer in the opportunity for failure of the building itself when you start to get into these like wavy curves, the waterproofing details. If you talk to any contractor, they're just gonna, you throw a curve on a project, they immediately are just gonna bump the costs up by like twice.
Yeah,
It's
I
crazy.
think I think that's such an interesting point though. And sorry, Lazo, I do see your comment there about the sound. Um, we're
I'm screaming.
we're gonna maybe Ian's just so passionate. He's just so passionate. The mandate for tonight was that I would have to be the one shouting because my mic was so bad last week. But I don't know. We're gonna have to workshop it as we go through the series. I think if everyone's generally okay, maybe we can work it out. But I'm gonna try and be a little bit louder. Sorry, Lazo. I just wanted to pick that one up, and we won't skip over the other comments. We'll get to them. I just wanted to touch on what you were saying, Ian, about. I mean, in a way, you're right about what you're saying about being able to sort of mass produce the simplicity of a skyscraper in a conceptual sense, but there's like this tectonic degree with which we talk about these buildings that sorry, I'm gonna land this plane here. I'm trying to make a point. I will make this point. We only ever seem to talk about like 3 or 4 skyscrapers in terms of the architectural canon on like the island of Manhattan, and there's a very specific reason why. And I'm thinking of the SOM. Is it the Pepsi building? Is that the one I'm thinking of? The SOM,
Mhm.
the Seagram,
Yeah.
Empire State, Chrysler, and I know there's a couple of others, obviously. But what I'm getting at is, so why do we only talk about those ones? And it's probably, I'm going to answer it, probably because the architect's hand is very present in those projects, even the built version of them.
Yeah.
Like the calibration of those details, the way in which the facade is articulated to like millimeter precision. AI is not going to do that. Like
No.
AI is going to give you what you think that is, but it's not going
Yeah.
to be that. And that's because it requires the human eye
Yeah.
to make those assessments. And that's what makes those buildings great. And you mentioned Chipperfield, like I know they have Bryant Park. That's the one in Manhattan, right?
Yes,
Bryant.
Bryant Park. Yeah, and the
Like
Rolex building.
if you
That's
describe that
yeah.
building, if you describe Bryant Park, it sounds like a skyscraper, but when you see it, you know that it's different
Yeah.
because there's an architect's eye and an architect's hand involved, and not just any architect, a great architect. And what I'm getting at is that yeah, AI might get there, probably not, but that's what we can still do. But it's hard to sell that to a client and communicate its value because they see dut, 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 whereas we see, we see the way in which that building is read as a piece of, civic architecture. And I think how do you communicate that value? I think that's a
Yeah.
problem I have now in 2025.
Yeah.
Like
I
what
think
makes one architect better than another doing that? So sorry.
yeah,
Mm.
no, I totally agree. And I think the way that you can communicate value in architecture is not only from a like a price per square foot aspect and like the efficiency, because that's how developers look at projects. They look at the efficiency of the project. They don't care. They do care about the facade. They care about how it looks in general, but they don't necessarily care about, these small, very small details as much as they care about, okay, is my corridor only 5% of my interior floor plate or 10% of my interior floor plate compared to the sellable or leasable space? Um, but what we can do as architects is find the different level of scales across all projects. It doesn't really matter what it is. If you're doing a tower, try and find something to play with that's at the scale of a person or even your hand, that would just make the experience better. And then same with the house. you know your formal language is going to be how that roof plane meets the neighborhood, but can you introduce something that will, kind of shock someone by, like, when they walk by, and whether
Mm.
that's like, oh well, the window is like that, and it illuminates the side of the house without having to, you know see inside of it, or when you go to Seagram's building, like maybe there's something at the entry that allows you to feel that experience and the touch of what the architect was trying to get across with the entire building language. I
Mm.
think the funniest part of the Seagram building is the renovation that they did. And if you go there, look at the lighting that's under the soffit, right as the entry is coming in. You will notice that the rhythm of the beams that Mies van der Rohe did are, let's just say 5 feet, but the lighting that's on the soffit that they put in is off center from each of those uh, beams on the facade, the mullions, and that Mies just did not do that detail, because he would
Mm.
have lined every light up with all of those columns, and it would have been that you know ferocity of detail that had to be included.
Mm-hmm.
There was, I don't know, Carl, if you did that post the other day, or maybe I saw it, but it was like Frank Lloyd Wright buildings, like the clients would get yelled at for moving the furniture.
Yeah. I think you
But
told me
that's a
about
little
it.
crazy, but I
Yeah.
get it. You know what I mean? Because the art is the advertisement for your work. And if it's changed from the original idea, it doesn't work as well. Now, I think if you build a house for someone, let them change their furniture. Like, it's not gonna, it's really not gonna matter. But I get it. And yeah, so it's changing scales, it's changing perception of what matters. I think that you know, another pet peeve I think of mine in architecture is not necessarily from the architect's perspective, but from the general population's perspective. I think everyone should care more about architecture and how buildings are built, because it will get rid of the standard, you know, 4/1, which is just I don't know if they talk about buildings like that in the UK or in Europe, but a 4/1 is like a 4-story wood frame over a cement block podium, because it's the cheapest and the most efficient building for the density that they need. But most people, and we notice this in the branding and the marketing, is they just want the apartment. They don't care necessarily about like the details of the cabinet. Now, if you're spending $7 million on the apartment, you probably care slightly more than the $1,500 a month studio. But everyone should take more of a passion in the place where they live, where they work, where they play, because it will only drive architects to design better projects. And those people that are just doing architecture for the paycheck or whatever, they'll kind of like, for lack of a better term, they'll lose the work because they'll get trained into caring more about and putting out more effort. There was, I think Bernard Schumi said this, and then my old boss had talked about this, but there's a level of detail per square foot or square inch that every project deserves. And by finding that nice balance, that's where you come up with the perfect project. So if you're designing a doghouse, the detail per square inch is something totally different than the tower, where it's a detail per square foot. When you look at like a 1 square foot section of a tower, you probably don't want too much differentiation across that square foot, because A, it's going to be expensive, but B, it just won't really read well as a composition across the entire thing. But if you're doing a countertop or kitchen millwork, you kind of want those, you know, stainless steel or brass details every, you know, 6 or 12 inches, because it just makes it feel like it has more of a crafted touch across the entire thing. So always thinking about that, always thinking about how to like improve projects on a per square inch or per square foot basis to provide more value and experience. And like, you know, going back to what I said, you're limited on budget sometimes, but it's always something that you can suggest.
I think it ultimately always comes down to economics, which isn't,
Oh yeah.
you know, a striking thing to say. But I think, like, coming back to Eric's original comment, like, I think, I don't know, we got to find a way to like subsidize these large developments in cities in a way that, you know, we can actually bring back affordable rents for small businesses.
Yes.
Because I was thinking when you were answering that question initially, and Rebecca, maybe you've got like a good reference for this, but like, just as a question, like, will an architect ever design a street again? You know, like a
Right.
street, because just the cost of development and property now is just so high. And if you
Yeah.
think of like New York, no one's going to design a block, right? You're going to design part of a block. And even then, so like, how much of a say really do you have over that street and how that feels as a public facing aspect, when ultimately your client's going to care about what's on floor 31, 32, 32,
Yep.
33, making sure everything's efficient and economic. And I
Mm-hmm.
do think it's like, it's just super, it's not, there's no point like getting caught up on it. It's just the reality of it. But it is frustrating where it's like the parts that probably can make the most impact are the parts that you're not really ever being paid for. So you can't really
Yeah.
do it, right?
I know like Van Dyke architects, they have an actual methodology now for dealing with streets, and it's mostly for residential projects, but they do it in commercial projects too, where they call it a Woonerf street.
Okay.
and it sort of has this typology, and it goes up, down, up, down, up, down, and it's like one level's pedestrian, and then the next one's bike, and then the next one's foliage,
Yep.
and then the next one's maybe car, but they try and keep it pedestrianized a lot of the time.
Yeah.
But because they've done this methodology so many times, they have the details for it and they're like refined. They know that it works for things like suds and drainage, so they
Mm.
can use that to convince a
Yep.
client to use this street. And then they have like shading and things like that from the trees. So
Yep.
it's functional, so they can convince the client to do it in that
Yeah.
way. And it's also beautiful and perfect for the people who are using that street.
Yep.
So
But
because they have a typology down, a methodology of doing it, and they know that it's fail safe, they've done it before, they have precedent. It's easy buy-in from the clients.
Yeah. Yeah, I think at least here in America and the city, it's like New York City itself. I think we don't put a strong enough effort on the importance of city and state government employees. And I say that because those people at the New York City Department of Transportation, they are usually the ones that are designing the streets, and I'm
mm,
sure there are plenty talented people there, but it's just not going to get, and maybe it will change, but I just don't see it changing soon enough to be able to like bring those talented people that want to go work at the SOMs or the Bigs or the Fosters and tell them that they should go work at the DOT, because those people need to drive the conversation at the DOT. That and architects do that. Like we work directly with plenty of government agencies, but at the end of the day, like if the government agency themselves are leading that,
mm,
then it will make a difference. I've long said that New York needs to totally redo its grid in a sense that you know we have so many bikers and so many like food delivery people that you could turn Park Avenue like one side into just cars and then the
mm,
other side into fully bikes, or Broadway, turn that all in. It's a road that cuts directly across the entire
Mhm.
island. Just turn it into a bike lane. Like you
Mm.
would get rid of so many accidents, and the main thoroughfare would be like diagonal across the city, and it would be perfect in my opinion. But it's really about getting those passionate people that want to go and work for those architect firms into the government agency role so that they can lead the charge against the standards that we put out. Yeah, and then as silly as this may sound, subsidizing architects and designers from the state and local governments to be able to go and make those really passionate projects,
mm.
because the developers sometimes just don't want to pay for the architect that is capable of doing that. They just want the guy to stamp it, or girl. They just want them to put their seal up, building goes up, done. That's it. And it's kind of a shame because you you want to have a project have the care that the project across the street might have, because the architect did do that one, but then you feel like you're looking at the cool one and then they're looking at the bad one. And so it's a tricky conversation to have, but yeah, I don't know what the solution is necessarily.
Yeah,
It
it's
is
so
in
true.
it is in policy, I think, somewhere.
Yeah,
It's definitely
policy.
policies
Yeah.
first, and then because you're right, the developer has to hit a certain margin. It's a business. Architecture is a business. Development is a business, and if they can't make their money back in XYZ, timeline, then the bank comes a calling, and they don't like that, and their interest rates go up, and all that stuff. So it's tricky. What we're trying to do is long term get into the development side too. There's a really good firm here in the city called Alloy Brooklyn, and they are an architect developer. They've done probably four. I can probably look outside my window and see three or four of their buildings. They mainly work in Dumbo, but they just launched downtown Brooklyn. It's called Alloy Block. It's a fully electrified and sustainable block of three or four buildings. The new building is going to be the first passive house tower in the world, I believe.
Wow.
But it's got a fully electrified tower that just completed last year. They have a school. They have a second tower coming, and I think they're doing some retrofit on existing historical structures on the site as well. So they're keeping like some of that preservation aspect as well. They're not just demoing the entire block like so many people do. But yeah, they're a really nice model, I think, for how architecture happens.
Yeah, that sounds incredible.
Yeah,
I'm gonna jump to some comments here. So
sure.
Joseph has said, "Let's go. Best architect, designer, and friend I know."
Thanks, Joe.
Styx says, "What are your favorite projects?"
That's a good question. I don't. I'm gonna be honest. I would be very difficult to answer that, mainly just because there are so many projects out there. I think the projects that I love the most tend to be slightly older. I
Mm.
love, let's just talk about New York. I love the Seagram building. I love the Plaza Hotel. I love some of these more random buildings on the Upper East Side, Upper West Side, or even in parts of Brooklyn. I love like Forest Hills, Queens. I think it's an amazing preserved neighborhood inside one of the most dense cities in the world. And you go there, and it's just like I'm in the suburbs, straight up suburbs, and but you're at the last stop on the Q train or the R train, and two stops on the Long Island Railroad into Manhattan, and within 30 minutes you're in Midtown. So what's really interesting right now, what's piquing my interest is the Penn Station
Mm,
neighborhood. Um, I was biking over there the other day, and I really thought that I was in Europe, like a very modern German or Tokyo, because they did such a good job with that district, the Penn district, and we'll see how it evolves, and even going over into Hudson Yards. I know there's a lot of controversy around how they built that and the new phase of that project, but when you talk about a 21st century city and you talk about the development of neighborhoods, it's incredible, the scale and the size, and say what you will, it's a successful project because those offices are sold out, and people are there. And
mm,
I think the main marker of success is it populated? Like, is it a building that people are going to
Mm.
and taking an interest in? um, I think there's room for improvement. I think we probably could have done more affordable housing rather than, like, if you look at the real estate market reports from the last 2 years, the median rent or sorry, sale price on most apartments in the city are like 1 million to 3 million depending on the neighborhood. Hudson Yards is like 8 million. And I'm like, oh my god, like, this is so disorienting almost, as like, what is it about this neighborhood that warrants the average price to be like 7 or 8 million? But it's just because they built all luxury towers. And but it's interesting, and I think it's mainly just public-private partnerships that really got that project done. And I'd love to see that level of development in a Columbus, Ohio, like really
mm,
taking care for the product and the development around major metropolitan transit systems.
mm,
And then elsewhere, love what's going up in London. I think those projects in the city of London, downtown area, are really interesting. And yeah, I pretty much anything in Japan though is great. I love I love the work that OMA does in Japan. It's so good.
Japan gets a free pass somehow. It's weird, isn't
Japan
it?
gets a free pass. They can do whatever. Yeah.
I was there last year and I took a photograph and I posted it on Instagram and someone was like, "Your photographs are amazing." I was like, "No, I'm just in Japan.
I'm just in
Everything's
Japan.
photogenic."
Japan will make it amazing.
Yeah, like
yeah,
and that's what I mean. Sort of like you just put your project in Japan and it's like, oh, it looks great. I don't know what
it's
that
so
is.
true.
Yeah, it's
It's
weird,
so
isn't it?
true. So
Yeah.
I'm gonna go on to the next question from
Yeah, cool.
Maren Glenn, who has said, speaking of architects, which architect's work do you admire most? Please don't say Cahill's. It's obviously mine, Maranglen. I'm an architect too, not Cahill. Who
What
is the star here between me and Cahill? It's
what
me. I
what
am the
work
future blueprint.
what work, Maren Glenn? What work of mine could he possibly like? There's no work. There's nothing to like. Do you like TikToks? I don't know.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
that's funny. What are my favorite architects at the moment? I mean, I said this to Kyle the first time that we met, but I love Chipperfield. I think his work is so good. I think I love like the rhythm and like the detail that or even the lack of detail that he puts. And also I think, characterizing it as like the best architect is also almost an unfair assessment because there's so many people that work on these projects, and yes, they are the visionaries, but also you don't know if they're the ones that are working on that project. Like I heard that Norman Foster only works on like 3 or 4 projects a year, and the rest are his dedicated team of very well trained, talented experts. And it's like, talk about new buildings, like his new JP Morgan building, in my opinion, doesn't look like it was designed by him. If you look at the tower that's 3 blocks down on the right side of Park Avenue, it's a totally different project. And I know different client, different whatever, but his work has tended to look more like Apple Campus, like stainless steel, and maybe it was just a diversion from the mold and a successful one at that. But it's interesting to see like the diversity of work that strays from the style. So yeah, I mean, I do like what Big is putting out. And if we're just talking architects, probably the big ones, no pun intended, Big, OMA, Chipperfield, and yeah, OMA has a
Mm,
really cool new tower that actually just got an article on how bad it's holding up. But their
mm,
new residential building in Greenpoint, Brooklyn, is really really cool. It like steps in 2 directions, 2 separate towers, and yeah, it's really fun. I like when people take that form and really just like play with it outside.
mm. Yeah, playful.
Yeah.
Cahill, who's your favorite architect apart from Chipperfield?
I
Like
do.
it has to be architect.
I did love. I did. It's funny because Chipperfield never feels like a architect. I don't
That's
Like
know.
because you
Pritzker,
work
doesn't he?
for.
It's not.
That's
It's
because you
not.
work for him.
I would have still said before then. There's still something. I know this sounds really crazy. There's still something very modest about his persona. Is the impression of him in the industry? I feel.
It's just because he's your mate. When you have him in your phone book, maybe he doesn't feel like a star
Yeah.
architect.
Yeah.
Trust
Can you
me.
call him in right now?
Yeah, guys, he's in the chat. That brings
Yeah.
us to our next special guest.
Surprise!
He's over here. He's in the room.
Yeah. Yeah.
No.
I know this is a live show, but I'm just gonna use the restroom really quickly.
Do
I've
it. Do
had
it.
about
I'm
a
gonna trust
whole
me.
bottle of water.
I will fill the air. Don't worry
All right.
about it, Ian.
Yeah.
I'll be right back.
I don't know. I just always feel like there's the architect. Like for example, he worked for Norman Foster. So it's like he feels sort of like a generation, half generation beneath that, even though he's
Mm,
a half generation above Bjork Ingels. So
mm,
I guess you're right, but he never feels like Helicopter and Patrick Schumacher and Penthouse on
mhm.
top of a skyscraper type. Do you know what I mean? I don't
Yeah.
know. It's more of it's like an aura thing. I don't know. I know that he's one of the most famous architects, but just never felt like a star architect.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. I know what you mean. It's probably like the whole he just it's the different feel whenever you're like seeing his buildings and stuff. It feels more like of the earth or something. I don't
yeah, like
know.
yeah,
It's not flashy.
there's much less of a here's my really cool parametric model, and I'm gonna just put it now in Mexico. It's
Mm,
more like, well, let's design something for Mexico.
mm,
I don't know, but I think it's sort of because like architects feel a little bit show business. Do you know what I mean? Like a little bit celebrity, but he feels 100% architect. And I don't know. But like I said, I understand it. Like if you categorize him in there, absolutely. I mean, he's got a Pritzker now. He is a star architect. Oh no, Ian
mhm.
Bentley has stopped recording. Is he coming back?
Still working on my computer.
Oh, he's back. Okay, cool. Sorry about that, Ian. We were just trying to. Oh, we got a bit of an echo here. Oh, in your AirPods.
Give me 1 second. Can
Cool.
you hear me?
Yeah,
Okay, cool.
I think we're getting the echo through your computer, Ian.
Oh, let me refresh real quick. Hold on. Give me 1 second.
Oh no, he's gone. We've lost Ian. We've lost our guest. Oh my
We've
gosh.
lost our first guest.
Sorry, we had to get rid of him. He was making us look bad. He's back. Ian's back.
We're back. Sorry. I don't know, for some reason it was when I took my AirPods out, then I reconnected, it made me refresh. But anyway, going back to the Starchitect favorite building conversation, I just thought of, and I took a peek at one of the next questions, which was like making architecture kind of like spiritual. Tadao Ando, I mean, I love Tadao Ando. His project, which I think is his only project definitely in New York, but probably in the States, I would say, is Elizabeth Street condo project. Never been inside, but it is so perfect in my opinion. It's like sleek concrete, like buttery soft, as like ironic as that sounds. And then it's so simple, but it's that simplicity that is almost impossible to get from a constructability standpoint. And then B, it's like the knowledge over so much time to get to that point. It's such a nice project in my opinion, and also the penthouse is like $35 million, but that's a different conversation.
Do you know he has a building in Manchester? You knew that, Rebecca, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
How did that come about?
I know.
So funny.
It's random, isn't it? But good for Manchester.
Yeah,
great.
Yeah. Just
if you're a Tadao Ando fan, you definitely are going to Manchester.
But do you not think there's something there
Yeah.
though, about our earlier point? When it's like you take Tadao Ando's projects in Japan and you get a world-class architectural photographer, and it's like, wow, architecture. But then you put it in Manchester in Piccadilly Gardens, and it's like, oh, what's that? Like, it is context, right? Isn't it? Like, because that type of architectural expression doesn't work in different contexts necessarily. Like, not I'm not speaking about Manchester. I'm just saying it's just funny because you look at how it's been treated. I think it was in the news recently as well. I think there was a lot of talk about them trying the refurbishment of it didn't go well or something. I don't know. But that's interesting. I mean, I guess it's an interesting one for sure. Like, I mean, Israel's general comment is sort of, is it normal to feel this way?
Yeah, so he's talking about seeing the sort of projects and all these different ways to approach design. And it sort of sounds like a little bit like imposter syndrome, not putting words in their mouth, but is it normal to feel this way? I'm gonna say 100% yes. I feel like whenever you see a new way of exploring architecture, a new sort of lens or a new building, or you discover a new architect, or even like different disciplines that you haven't considered that can mesh and sit on top of architecture and could be considered, you're like, how did I not know this before? And there's so many, like, architecture is everything. I was talking with an ecologist the other week, and they were telling me about all these things I should be considering in my design. And I was like, how have I never thought about this before? You know, like with the lighting and things that I was doing in spaces that I didn't realize was really negatively affecting the space, because it affects the person positively. Like a well-lit area is better for safety, but it's really bad for badgers, for example, you know? And so it's just all these things that you're like, oh, okay, it actually isn't a good thing. And you're
Yeah.
discovering constantly about how you should act with your sort of power as a designer.
I would say I think yes, it's normal to feel that way. And I think I would go further and say if you feel like you sort of know everything, then it's probably time to leave architecture, because you should probably always feel a little bit like the tide's rising, I think, wherever you are. And I usually equate that to, like, it's a bit dramatic maybe to always say you should always have imposter syndrome. You should not. But you should always feel like you don't know. You should know what you don't know. Like
Yeah.
always, you should have a grasp on that and like be humble in that sense. So wherever you work or whatever stage you're at, you're accepting to the idea that
Yeah.
there's more to learn rather
Mm-hmm.
than thinking,
And the best firms,
mm,
the best firms, not just architecture, but the best businesses too, they are led by the people that understand what they don't know,
mhm.
and finding those people to assist them in getting to that point, that destination. um that's why I kind of laugh when it's like, oh, it's this guy's building. It's like that guy and 25 other people.
He probably can't tell you
You know,
anything about the building. He probably
yeah,
doesn't know
that guy
anything
and
about it.
yeah, and the 500 contractors that worked
Yeah.
on it. It's like it's everyone's project, and it's very overwhelming. I do sometimes feel, not to say that we are like put on a pedestal above any other profession, but it is overwhelming to have the sense that it's all on your shoulders, so to speak. Like the idea that your project potentially could be one of the worst projects in that city. You know what I mean? It's like, oh my God, how do we not make the worst project for this new city? Like, okay, and if we can do that, we're good. And so,
Carbuncle cup.
yeah. And I think it's the realization of understanding that makes you a good designer. Like if you
Yeah.
are thinking like that, you're a good designer,
Mm-hmm.
because there are plenty of people that probably don't think that their work is detrimental to like the world around them.
Mm.
Sometimes I walk into a new apartment building and I see like 5,000 Kelvin lighting, and I'm like, I'm gonna blow my brains out. So like,
Mm.
please, this is offensive to my eyes. Like, let's make it a little softer, and let please, God, just flip the light bulbs out.
I always just like
Yeah.
a bad door, like a bad entrance to a public building drives me
Yeah.
crazy. Like it's just like I'm gonna sound very sensitive here, but it's like how rude. Let me in.
Yeah.
Why is why do I have to push that or pull
Yeah.
that thing? And it's like, like just those types of things are like
Yeah.
drive me crazy.
Mm.
So it's
I
like
worked on a
Yeah.
couple courthouses, and I think it's those projects that deserve the most attention,
mm,
because you have to think about the person that's entering that building.
mm,
It's They are high stress individuals. It doesn't matter what side of or whatever you're doing. You could be coming in through the Sally port where you're, going on trial, or you could be coming in through the front entrance where you're like the family of the person on trial. You're the lawyer who has to defend the person on trial. And so it's like all of those experiences need to be captured in how the building is shaped. And so you spend a lot of time, thinking of, okay, what's going to make these people feel better about being in this space. Um, and you could apply that to any typology. Same thing with coming home to your apartment. Like, I love our building that we live in because it's a long corridor that it's two towers, like two 7-story buildings with a courtyard in the middle. And it's very European, actually. And you go through, and in the in between space between tower 1 and tower 2, you have a light well with a fully enclosed glass garden. And so you get to walk through, and it's this contrast of like the brutalist concrete on one side and then the garden on the left. And it's just such a nice inviting space to
mm,
like come home to every day. Whereas, sometimes you walk in, and whether it's a walk up or just, even some of these luxury buildings, it's like you just walk through, it's a bunch of people and then an elevator core, and you go up and it's a 700 square foot white box. And it's like, where's the fun? Like, where are we, like, where are we going? You know what I
Mm.
mean? Like, make it fun, make it exciting. And it doesn't have to be fun in the sense of like, oh yeah, let's do some like squiggly,
Mm.
curved concrete. Like, fun is is it different? Like,
Yeah.
is it just different than everything else? And it can be such a varying degree.
Yeah. It's enhancing people's
Yeah,
lives in some way.
exactly.
Yeah. Rather than just silly fit lines for the sake of it.
Yeah.
Just to look different. So, right. I'm very aware of time here, and I
oh
know
yeah.
that we could talk to you like probably
Yep.
for another hour,
Yeah.
Ian.
Ian, we'll
So
have to
I'm
get you
gonna,
again, Ian. We'll have
No,
to
you're
get you
good.
on for another one.
yeah, we need a
Yeah.
part 2. But we
Sequel.
have two more
Two more
questions. We have
questions.
one comment as well. I'll just go through the comment first. So um, Maren Glenn says, at the office I'm working in now, there's a guy that used to work for Tadawando, really tough office. Yeah, all star
Yeah.
architects that seem like it's the same. Lazo says, what is your favorite country and city architecture? And then Glenn also says, if you could build an anti-McMansion, would there be any particular style or aesthetic you
Yeah.
like better, or would the site land dictate some of that? I actually have an answer for that as well. So we'll let
Cool.
Ian answer those sort of two questions first.
Nice. Yeah. I mean, I probably have like four answers for the what is your favorite country and city architecture. I think, but I'll go with the one that I say the most. I think my favorite country at the moment is Iceland. I think
Mm.
it's such a unique place. It's very diverse in the sense of their landscape. It's
Mm-hmm.
like anything. I don't know if you guys have been there, but it is incredible. Like you feel like you're on another planet. You could be on one side of the islands seeing like these puffins that are around and taking pictures of these like majestic birds that you've never seen before. And then on the other side of the island, it's like hot springs and fjords that are like tens of miles long, and it's just like this is incredible. So that's probably my favorite country at the moment. Although I do have like a plenty favorites, but I just always end up going back there as like a nice reset. It's a nice place to reset, and like it's 4 hours away from New York. I'm kind of like confused why people go to like Florida or California for vacation, because you have these places like Iceland that are, you know, you leave at 7 p.m. and you're there at like 4 a.m. It's like incredible. And then favorite city architecture, that's really tough because I think it changes based on what you're really looking for. Because you could say Reykjavik is amazing in terms of its city architecture, but my favorite city at the moment, I think, is probably Tokyo, with Shanghai or Hong Kong as a close second. I'm excluding New York because I don't think that's a really valid answer.
Mm.
I obviously love where I live, or else I wouldn't live here. But I was really enamored when I went to Hong Kong and Shanghai in 2019 for the first time. I loved when I was in Moscow as well, and St. Petersburg. I think those are amazing cities. Um, it also has a lot to do with like the people there as well. The people in Moscow were so friendly. They were very like, we took a couple tours and they were just some of the nicest people. And then yeah, I mean Tokyo. We went a year and a half ago now, and we're gonna go back in the fall. You could spend a decade in Tokyo and still not see even half of it. It's
Mm.
it's an incredible place. So yeah,
Mm.
but what about you guys?
Yeah. Um, I mean, I guess country, like I never really thought about Iceland, but it makes sense because it's like so the geothermal efficiency of it, like it's
Yep.
one of the most sustainable countries in the world. And the things that they're doing in terms of like harvesting that and using it as a renewable energy source is incredible. So
Yeah.
that's a great answer, I think. Yeah, Shanghai, I feel like it's sort of you can tell that it's new,
Yeah.
which sounds stupid, but it does feel like you're stepping into the future when you're in Shanghai.
Yep.
Tokyo is unreal as well. I mean, I guess a lot of the efficiencies that they have of buildings for earthquake proof and disaster proof, how they move when an earthquake occurs. I mean, they've been doing that for years and
Mm.
Yeah.
it's incredible.
There's
So
a
yeah,
there's a really good book. I'm trying to find the hold on. What's the name of it? It's called Pure Invention. Really good book.
okay.
It's about Tokyo, and really about, the first like chapter really dives into how they reinvented themselves after World War II, and
Mm.
it was purely based on like toys, and the childish nature of toys and how they appealed to the rest of the world post World War II. I mean, we obviously did incredibly dangerous things with the two bombs, and the perception of that towards the rest of the world was probably this isn't a good place. Like, why would you bomb a good place? So the perception is like, okay, well, we need to make the world feel like they love us again. And their main export was cartoon and
Mm.
toys. And through that generation of income, they reinvented their entire country. Like, I think the country itself had, could be wrong here, like 9 million people or something at the time of World
Mm.
War II. And now Tokyo has like 20 million people.
Yeah.
So their growth was incredible, and took all that money and put it into the infrastructure like the Shinkansen. And if you look at like the history of their infrastructure, this one guy, when he was 19, got a job on the locomotive, which was like a coal-powered locomotive, and then in his same lifetime was a captain on the Shinkansen. His span of infrastructure operation was like ancient to the most futuristic within like 50 years.
Mm.
Mm.
It's insane. It's
Mhm.
insane.
We were talking about Tokyo. I can't remember when it was. Maybe it was yesterday. We were talking about Akira in the Neo Tokyo, and like that post nuclear war anxiety from like the 80s, when it was obviously written, but obviously in relation
Yeah.
to Tokyo and Japan's history with America. I just think that's like, I think, because I think that's my answer is Tokyo, and I know like all three of us now have mentioned it, but I just think there's just something like
Yeah.
that. It's another planet. That's how it
Yeah.
felt being there. It's like,
Mm.
why is it
Totally different.
so better in so many
Mm.
ways, and then still so modern, but then still so old, and it's just incredible. But I'm
Yeah.
not going to take up a lot of time talking about
No
it. I think
trash
we all love
cans.
Tokyo. No time. Yeah.
Yeah.
Learned that the hard way. Trying to never go for it's not a walkable coffee kind of place. That's for
No.
sure. Learned that the hard
Mhm.
Yeah,
way.
definitely not.
But yeah, it's awesome.
Okay, last question. This is to Ian first. If you could build an anti McMansion, would there be any particular style or aesthetic you like better, or would the site/land dictate some of that?
Yeah. That's a good question. I mean, I think honestly, the design of a house really comes down to the person that's living there. I think when you design like office buildings or residential towers, or obviously schools, like you kind of design around a program that is driven by the developer and their wishes. When you're doing a project like a house, you really want to dive into like how they're going to use the place, and how are they seeing this as a trajectory. Is it something that um, is a 30-year project for them, where they're like, okay, we're going to live here for the rest of our lives and then pass it down to our kids? Or are we like, I really just want to build like this sculptural thing, and then maybe I'll sell it in like 10 years? And that will dictate a lot about how you design a
Mm.
house. But I don't, we go back and forth on this about style. I don't. I think the style that is the overarching style is contextual style. Like, where are we designing first, and does that drive, especially in the age of like climate change and design around sustainability, you do
Mm.
kind of have to look at that first before you say, I'm going to design an all glass building. Because
Mm.
if you're doing this in Arizona, like if someone calls you up and says, I want a house, it's in Scottsdale, that's probably not the best typology of house. You're not going to do like a Mies van der Rohe house in that climate, because it's not going to work performance wise, or you're going to have to spend a lot of money. So I would say overarching is like a contextual approach. But yeah, we designed a Tudor house, and then we designed like a very modern house with like a flat roof
Mhm.
and double planes, and all glass. And it's just really about what you want to express. And the Tudor
Mm.
house fit in a neighborhood that needed to be contextual to the historic architecture in the neighborhood. But the other design was something that really wanted the person to feel like they were in the woods, you know what I mean, like really enveloped by the nature.
Mhm.
And so I don't think people should pigeonhole themselves into a style. You know,
Mhm.
the rinse and repeat model of projects is boring in my opinion. I don't want to do cookie cutter.
Mm.
So I think cookie cutter works sometimes, but I don't know. What's the fun in saying like that's a Norman Foster building? You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Because you know it is because that's the style. I'd rather have a diverse, almost Philip Johnson kind of modernism,
Yeah.
where it's like, oh, that's brick, and then that's steel, but they're both
Mm-hmm.
the same people.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
If cookie cutter was the model, then you would only ever design one building and call it a day.
Yeah.
That's it. So I just
Mm-hmm.
that's why I don't not a
I will
fan.
say though, there is like we just lost a project out to this really famous interior designer Rockwell Group, and they're amazing. Like they're great. Their work is great. It's a smash hit. Almost every restaurant they do is like posted in all the architectural magazines. Um, but someone said on like a TikTok video, it's like they just rinse and repeat the same concept of a restaurant over and over and over again. And I think that's appropriate to a certain degree, but you know, people like it. Sometimes it's hard to beat cookie cutter sometimes when it's that
Mm-hmm.
successful. But yeah, it's also just experience. It's like you haven't been around long enough to garner that automatic.
Yeah.
Yeah, you got the project. So it's time and style, and
Yeah.
managing those two things is architecture, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. That's great advice. And just Glenn, on that, because you mentioned the term anti-McMansion, I just wanted to let you know about, if you don't know about this already, Kate Wagner has done a lot of research about McMansion Hell. And there's a part on her website that has McMansions 101, what makes a McMansion bad architecture? And she goes through the different principles of masses and voids, balance. She talks a little bit about proportion, and then
Yep.
rhythm as well, and all the sort of things to avoid to make it like a bad piece of McMansion hell.
Yeah.
So that's a really interesting thing as well, what to
Yeah.
avoid.
Also,
Also, the
sorry,
anti
go ahead, Ian.
McMahon. Oh, sorry. I was just gonna say if you were gonna do an anti McMansion, it would be Philip Johnson Glass House. It would be one room. Because I would say McMansion actually is any house that kind of exceeds the general space requirements for who's living in it.
Yeah.
Like if you got 20 kids, then fine, build yourself a 20,000 square foot house. But if you
Mm-hmm.
have just you and your wife or your husband or whatever and your dog, and we get together on the weekends and the whole family comes by, it's like, well, that's not you're not really getting the best use out of that house. So
Mm.
it's interesting because it comes down to like the use, and some people just want a house to be big because they want the big house, they want to show off to their friends or
Mm-hmm.
whoever. But is that the best use of resources and
Mm-hmm.
time?
Mm-hmm.
So
Agreed.
Yeah. The McMansion in a way is actually anti-architectural almost. So to have the anti-McMansion, like you're saying, like Philip Johnson Glass House, is
yeah,
sort of like the inverse of that
Mm-hmm.
equation, I guess.
yeah,
I like them.
Okay.
totally.
I think they're cool in a funny way.
Um,
This is an
I
anti
was
McMansion podcast now.
Yeah, yeah,
we're riding on Kate Wagner's coattails.
yeah.
Um, Ian, thank you so much
Of
for
course,
coming
thank you.
on and talking with us. And we really appreciate your input. And thanks for everybody who logged on
Yes.
to chat with us and all the amazing questions and all the
Yeah.
engagement. And we had a really good time. It flew, which is always a good sign.
Yeah. Yeah, I think
Thank you
I think
very
the one
much.
thing to leave with is like, even if you're not in architecture, just talk about architecture, talk about building design, talk about space, talk about lighting, anything that has to deal with the built environment. You experience it every single day. Every place that you go, an architect did. It's full stop. It's very difficult to
Mhm.
say that about any profession. You can't
Yeah.
really say that about doctors. You can't say that about musicians. There's
Mhm.
not a constant stream of music playing in your head, maybe, but that's a
It
conversation for
matters.
later.
It
Yeah,
matters,
it matters,
period. And
and
like, yeah.
and it only will
Yeah.
change the bad design, not as a pun. That's kind of the pun of our studio is like, we don't make bad work. We don't strive to do things at an average pace. And the only way you can do that is by conversating and talking about it. As with anything, you want to change the world in any respect, you have to talk about the problems. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, if you want better buildings, keep talking about it, because it will
That's
change.
yeah, that's great advice. And I guess
Yeah,
one question that we sort of want to end on is what, Ian, do you think the future blueprint of architecture actually is? So in the next 50 years, what do you think the
sure.
future blueprint is?
Yeah, I think the future of architecture will be the most successful people will be the most successful architects will be the ones that figure out how to equalize the playing field of housing and sustainable living. I think, the days of creating ultra luxury apartments, the word luxury is like overused to the nth degree. It'll be the person that defines what the new normal is of design. It's going to be really difficult to get ourselves out of this crisis of housing and affordability. Um, Politics aside, even if there was the most progressive president in the world, it would be very difficult to build the amount of housing that we need to get out of this issue. Like the average rent in New York City right now is $5,000 a month. That's insane. Like, and people live here, but like, why should we be spending 90% of our income on housing? It's crazy. So I think the future of architecture will be not who designs the next, Arc Daily building that gets the most likes and controversy. It's who designs the next great suburban development that is walkable, livable, sustainable, and all the other, ables that are out there. And does it with a degree of like, okay, this is nice, like this looks good, and can commoditize that and develop it on mass scales, not just one-off developers that want to do this project, and then oh yeah, it was great, but it was too expensive in this regard, and I can't multiply it 1,000 times.
Mm.
So yeah, I think that'll be the next one. I love the luxury projects. Don't get me wrong. Someone wants a $20 million penthouse, we'll do it. But the thing that intrigues me the most is the person making $60,000 a year. How are they living in an amazing space?
Mm-hmm.
So
Designing for the masses. Love that
yep,
answer. Fantastic. And I could
yeah,
start a whole other conversation about that. I have so
yeah.
much spinning in my head, but
Yeah,
I'm gonna stop because then we'll never
cool.
stop.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But
Thanks
thank you
so
so
much,
much.
Ian.
of course.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah,
Yeah.
this is great. So thank you everyone for joining. Thank you, Ian. Thank you, Rebecca. This has been good fun. I think we're gonna have to do a part 2 for sure, because I
Yeah,
could easily
probably.
go for another hour. So
Yeah,
it's a nice place to
awesome.
leave it.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah.
Okay. Good night, everyone. Thanks for
Thanks,
joining.
everyone.
Oh, if you're here and you've enjoyed this, leave us a sub. Just sub to the channel. Give us a little sub. That would be amazing. Thank you very much. Much appreciated, folks.
All right,
Okay.
guys. We'll
Till
chat.
next time. Goodbye.